Hi there. Back on November 7th, HBO and Max's parent company, Warner Brothers Discovery, had their next big quarterly earnings report, which was greatly improved from the disastrous one they had back in August. I was going to report on this a lot more, but I got very sick in mid November. Plus, every couple of days there was a string of new updates in the wake of this good news of other things that were happening with Warner Discovery. So, this is my big catch up video on state of the industry news for the past 2 months. And long story short, everything that could go well for Warner Discovery has gone well for Warner Discovery since early November, and things are looking up. Now, from our perspective, as my channel is dedicated to the World of Westeros franchise, the point of my video here is through various different aspects, wow, that division was doing well. Why aren't you giving them more money again? That my entire focus is the top question on everyone's minds. Season 2 of House of the Dragon was hurt by a reduced episode count, and a couple of other shows they reduced, and they faced backlash for this. Will they restore the episode count to 10 episodes every season, or either that or extended season count through season 5? Will they increase their episode budget again? And my conclusion is I can't predict the actions of David Zaslav, their CEO, because we can't assume he's a rational actor. But if he was listening to all of this, the money is there. The money was there to begin with. It was silly for them to cut that from one of their best performing divisions, but there is more money. They are doing better than expected. And the whole point of my video here is there is a strong case for restoring the episode count. All hope is not lost, is my point. That if we were in a position on the board, we'd be arguing, look how much money specifically House of the Dragon is driving as one of their hit shows. You should avoid the problems Season 2 had by increasing their budget again. So, the way I'm going to approach this is all of the updates over the past 2 months basically cluster into 7 major points. So to keep this organized, I'm going to go through 7 major points which have a list of details for each one. All of which, I already gave you my conclusion. Things are doing better. Why aren't you increasing the episode budget for Westeros shows? Let's start off with point 1, the quarterly earnings report itself. Fourth quarter earnings report on November 7th showed that Max, the streaming service, continues to be the most profitable part of Warner Brothers Discovery, which spans across streamer and cable TV and movie studios and video games. That head above the rest is their streaming service is what's generating most of their revenue. Strong case for House of the Dragon is one of your flagship streaming shows. Why aren't you giving them more money? Well, to go down the bullet point list of details, the total raw revenue for Warner Discovery as a whole this past quarter was $9.6 billion, which is actually below the $9.8 billion predicted by Wall Street analysts and down from $9.9 billion raw revenue last quarter. This is raw revenue, not profit margin, minus cost, which is different, and they don't always release that. But this is for Warner as a whole, and that was obviously due to their other divisions. Like, the movie studio has its ups and downs. Movie studio division revenue fell 17% compared to a year ago, because they don't have the mega hit Barbie. It's weird when they compare that to mega hits, or like when their video game division goes, well, we had a catastrophic loss compared to Hogwarts Legacy last year was a mega hit, and we didn't have a mega hit even if it wasn't a flop for something else. But this is a bar set against the Barbie movie. But on the other hand, Beetlejuice 2 was actually pretty successful. Wasn't Barbie level, though. And, of course, you have to factor in the mega flop Joker 2. When you give someone a blank check like that with no oversight, that lost something like $200 million. But movie studio has its ups and downs. They've had some clunkers like Joker 2. They've had some successes like Beetlejuice 2 and other franchises they're doing. That's as to be expected for the movies. But for Max streamer global subscription increased 7.2 million people in the past quarter because of the summer launch in France and Belgium. So now they are officially over 100 million global subscribers. The current count is 110.5 million worldwide. This makes Max the fourth largest streamer in the world. The only one of four that have over 100 million subs. The top three, of course, all have over 200 million, over twice as big. Disney, Amazon, Netflix. But again, it's not about raw number of subscribers. That's just a milestone. The real issue is, are you profitable or not? Netflix is actually doing very well profitability-wise now. Disney is set to be profitable next year, and by slashing everything, they managed to reach net profitability. But now they need to make it sustainable. And of course, most of the losses financially were from the cable division. That's what really weighs them down. But on the streaming side, Max's ad revenue increased about 50% from last quarter, which itself had doubled year to year because of all of the big international expansions. Last year doubled because of the big launch of Max across all of Latin America at a single stroke. This year it increased 50%. And remember, this quarterly earnings report came out November 7th. So this is about 2 weeks before the big launch of Max across the Southeast Asia market. We don't have numbers for that yet. That'll come next quarter report. I will cover that. So a big profit driver is when you have these international markets, that one of the things they openly said, well, of course Netflix and Disney Plus are doing better than us. We're not in every global market yet. That got put on pause when they made the mega merger with Discovery. That a key driver is international markets for your profitable streaming service. So they're doing pretty well with that, and that's why I keep covering international launches like this and as standalone videos. They are a big factor in the health of the industry and whether we get more episodes or not for funding reasons. Now, overall, the direct-to-consumer market, that's their streaming division plus subscription cable like HBO, because it's not ad-supported cable. HBO and Max are considered the same division, direct-to-consumer. Direct-to-consumer division, profits, not revenue, profits, rose 160%. Up from 111 million last quarter to 289 million this quarter, which was attributed to a combination of good content, ad revenue boost, and a price hike back in June. But okay, we're willing to pay if the product is good. Big point here. For all of the, well, Discovery absorbed Warner, said they'd kick in more money. Zaslav used to be the head of Discovery Plus until they made a combined thing. Officially, this report confirmed that only 12% of Max's streaming revenue comes from Discovery content. Max is their most profitable division, and most of this is driven by Warner content, like, HBO-type drama content. And in turn, most of that Warner content, well, this is actually true for most streamers, most of the revenue from the entire Max streamer platform comes from about their top 20 shows, almost all of which are like HBO shows, HBO originals, like House of the Dragon, or Penguin, or Dune Prophecy. But of course, except for like Netflix, I saw this whole report in TheWrap.com that except for Netflix, every other streamer, most of their revenue is generated by their top 20 shows. But if you think about it, they tend to only have about 24 really big shows in a given calendar year. I mean, think about it, like how many shows were we watching on HBO in the fall at one time? Well, I was watching Penguin, then I was watching Dune. There's two right there. So if you consider, like, people aren't going back to watch reruns of minor shows that ended a decade ago. In terms of actively premiering shows, each streamer usually has something like 20 or so. Point of all of this is you can point to a pie chart and say that the Westeros franchise, House of the Dragon, this would merit its own chunk on a pie slice, not of Max, but of Warner Discovery as a whole. The Westeros franchise is driving profit on their most profitable subdivision. Why aren't you giving them more money? This was point one. Max Streamer is officially doing so well, and so much of this is due to only a handful of shows. Don't cut their budgets again. Point two. Since the election in the United States, Zaslav has openly said he looks forward to a new round of mega mergers and acquisitions with a government that supports deregulation. I made a quick video about this back in November, right after the election. Then I got really sick. So this is like the last big industry video I did. I just made a quick update. Wow, turns out they will be trying to do mega mergers again. December 12th, this stopped being a theoretical. For 6 weeks we were sitting around going, well, when are they going to start? They've promised we're going to have mega mergers, which will increase our cash flow, which they should in turn, inject back into Max episodes. December 12th, they actually began this process by splitting their cable and streaming assets. There's been speculation on this for months for all the major streamers that have cable channels. Obviously, Netflix, Amazon, Apple are born digital, but the other big ones like Disney or Comcast's NBC Universal, which has Peacock. A couple of weeks before what Warner did, Comcast was the first. They split NBC Universal into the successful NBC part and another part that's just a dumping box for their unsuccessful cable channels, which they spun it off into this dumping box, which they provisionally named Spinco, because it's spun off. Now, a few weeks later, on December 12th, Warner Discovery followed suit, did the same thing. And it's probable that Disney is going to do this too in the near future. But this is good. We were yelling at them to do this for a while. All the industry reports going, why are you still treating cable as part of your main company? It is the millstone around your neck, weighing you down. Consider that House of the Dragon Season 2 got budget cuts because, well, our company is losing money from cable. From ad-supported cable that isn't HBO. That made no sense. House of the Dragon was being punished for a division it wasn't really in. So now, on the books, legally, this distinction is reflected, that HBO shows won't be punished for how their ad-supported cable networks are underperforming. So on December 12th, they announced Warner Brothers Discovery's specific restructuring. And this gets a bit complicated because, well, weren't they already the same company? Wait, now they're different, but they're still owned. The difference is between they used to be all one legally defined company with separate administrative subdivisions. But now they are multiple legally distinct companies, which in turn are all owned by one corporation. There is a legal distinction of, are you legally a separate company or not, now reflecting the administrative divisions. It depends on how you count. Basically, up to now, Warner Discovery's assets were divided between 3 top-level administrative divisions. Movies are part of studios, networks for linear cable networks, and direct-to-consumer, DTC, streaming services plus direct subscription things like HBO. And I have a whole other video on how, in turn, there are a couple of other subdivisions within that. Well, there's international cable versus domestic cable, the sports and everything. There's a couple of other internal divisions, but those are the 3 big ones. Studios, networks, direct-to-consumer. Like, video games used to be part of studios within that, but those three top level divisions. Under the new restructuring that just went into effect, they split all of their assets into two legally distinct sub-companies, both of which are owned by Warner Brothers Discovery Corporation. Cable networks got split off as a company now called Global Linear Networks, while direct-to-consumer and studios got combined into the new company Streaming and Studios. So just as when Comcast split off their cable channels from their streaming division to separate companies, this is a prelude to selling them off to cut their losses, and or to smooth out other planned mergers and acquisitions. This is cleaning house right before another mega merger like buying Paramount or something. We are on the cusp of a big new round of mega mergers on the scale of when Disney absorbed Fox in 2016. Which is all good for us, that the market can't sustain 7 big streaming services. Some of them are going to need to combine again. And the entire reason Zaslav has been belt-tightening the past few years with massive budget cuts is they were saving up money to try to buy other things on the cheap. Paramount, possibly Peacock. We'll have to see. But allegedly, if Zaslav wasn't going to cut and run, which I honestly think at this point if he was going to, he would have by now, that he's waiting to try to see what other mega mergers he can do from some of the smaller streamers, which are top 3 or so. I don't think Apple would ever sell its own assets. That's a promo thing for Apple, the tech company. But we're talking Paramount and Peacock, maybe AMC stuff, we're not really sure. That's for speculation. But they said we're cutting costs because we're trying to save up a war chest for the next round of mega mergers. And it's not theoretical anymore. This is the preparation for, within a matter of months, if not weeks, we're going to start actively trying mega mergers. The Discovery Plus Warner mega merger came in April of 2022, so within the next 3 months, within the next set of quarterly announcements, as soon as the next presidential administration starts, as soon as everyone comes back from holiday break, we are going to be seeing movement on this within the next 12 weeks or so. And it will drastically affect the state of the industry as a whole. And it will be good for us because there weren't enough to go around. That's point 2. Point 1 is Max is doing really well. Point 2 is new round of mega mergers incoming, also good. Point 3, don't even take my word for it. Merely announcing that they were legally splitting their cable and streaming services, which is a prelude to mega mergers, restored investor confidence in Warner Discovery so much that on December 12th, after the announcement, their stock price surged 12% within a single day. Their price was already rising since the improving third quarter earnings report on November 7th, but when I started covering this in the wake of the disastrous third quarter earnings report first week of August, their stock price, which had once been over $20, had fallen to below $7. They were down to a third of what they started with, maybe a fourth of what they started with, arguably. So they were down to $6.9 a share at one point. And since the quarterly earnings report in November, they went back up to $10, and within a day, they went back up to $12. Of course, 2 weeks later, it went back down to $10 by the end of December, but that's because there was an interest rate cut. That affected every stock. That isn't something they did. That was understandable. Speaking of which, some people were upset at the time, this was a week before Christmas, that they said Zaslav sold half of his stock in Warner Discovery. Does this mean he's going to cut and run? Well, honestly, I think if he was going to cut and run, he would have sold all of it. That it's because there was an interest rate cut, the idea is, and I take him in face value, not that I really trust Zaslav, but just, it's more pragmatic and mundane than that, yeah, to cash in before the interest rate cut, he sold half of his stock before you were talking a difference of a couple of $100 million when you own that much stock. So that doesn't really bother me. That's more the market as a whole. Other industry, there's dedicated industry channels who can talk about this better than I can, but their stock price is recovering noticeably. Not up to $20 again, but the stock price has nearly doubled at certain points from what it was at the depths of August. Again, my point that on every measurable facet or aspect, Warner is doing better. They have more money. Stock price is doing better. So you can't really argue, well, we don't have money to give to more House of the Dragon episodes. Point 4, and this is the last point that isn't purely speculative. Warner Brothers Discovery finally wrapped up that really ugly fight it had with the NBA, National Basketball Association in America, which that is the winter sport compared to football. That when football ends, it goes to basketball, almost as big, the second biggest TV ratings after football. And that was this huge double failure going into the bad August earnings report, is that the NBA had just called Zaslav's bluff and dropped their contract with Warner that they've had for 30 years. So this was this double humiliation, and it was thought that the legal wrangling over this might drag out for months. But back on November 16th, a week after the earnings report, it wrapped up. And Zaslav actually got the best deal he could given the circumstances. That they got some streaming rights in the United States and ceded others, while they kept some international rights. But in particular, the top-rated Inside the NBA analysis show can stream on ESPN. So basically, they didn't hold on to all of their NBA rights, but they got some key concessions for their most important stuff. So I honestly thought we'd be arguing about that through next August or something. It was going to be this really drawn-out legal fight on the scale of this is the biggest shakeup in sports broadcasting in a decade, really. Now it's over and done with. It's in the past now that they've wrapped on what was going on with the NBA. Got decent concessions. Other things we were hanging on to the shows that are actually really profitable. A separate but related sports news thing, which doesn't just affect Warner but everyone, is the stalled launch of their planned sports streamer Venu. The idea was that this isn't just Warner, it was a joint venture between Warner and Disney, which is a very bigger company than them, plus Disney's Fox assets, but they own Fox. There's this joint Warner-Disney thing that we're going to have this combined sports streamer over the top. I guess it would mostly be for, like sports bars and stuff buy it at a rate or something, but this was going to be their competition for other sports things. Disney owns ESPN. And right after they lost the NBA deal, Fubo TV filed a lawsuit that stalled its launch. And they were fighting this tooth and nail because they knew Venu would bury them. And this just got weird that on a scale of 1 week, like in the past 2 weeks, Fubo agreed to drop the charges, to drop the suit, in return for Disney saying, we'll trade you, we'll let you run Hulu as part of the Fubo package if you drop this lawsuit. And they said, well, okay, this is the best we're going to get. Then there are all these news articles saying, wow, it looks like Venu's going to launch and it'll be good for everyone. Then, like a week ago, they officially said, we are abandoning our attempts to set up Venu. It will never launch. It is a canceled project. For both Warner and Disney. And this led to all sorts of head scratching on, you just won. Why would you suddenly give up on it? The running theory, as much as anyone can guess, is they could have set it up, but it would have involved a lot more red tape and a lot more audit scrutiny over their books, which they don't want people looking too closely at. So rather than go through that whole process and maybe run into more red tape, apparently they just decided it wasn't worth it. So now this proposed joint streamers for sports between whatever Warner has and whatever Disney has, that's lost. So, what sports are going to be broadcast by Warner will be broadcast on Max. I don't know if this is good or bad news, but it was already kind of out there. But like I said, the overall point of this video is pretty much everything that could have gone well has gone well. The Venu thing didn't really work out. That was more of a proposal. On the other hand, they did resolve the NBA lawsuit as best they could, so it's at least in the rearview mirror now. But that's with sports packages. And remember, a big concept you have to keep in mind is that the top content for cable channels now, not streaming, cable, is sports and 24-hour TV news networks. Because they're live. That the one thing that streaming isn't quite up to yet is live streaming. If you've seen like the Tyson fight recently and stuff, and everyone's complaining that there was lag, it's if ever you've been watching something live, or when I've tried to watch House of the Dragon live on a night where everyone is watching the premiere, and the website crashes because of all the traffic, the system still isn't up to having everyone watching the same live thing at the same time. Cable, on the other hand, infrastructure-wise, technically is. So those are the only really profitable things that are still on cable TV. So they try to buy those up when they can, such as that Warner has CNN, that it was such a blow that they lost these basketball things. We'll have to see where that sorts out, but that's why I'm devoting so much attention to sports, is it's actually one of their main revenue drivers at this point. Last, we come to point 5 for this video. I know I said there's 7 points, but the last 2 are really supplements. The point 6 is just going over specifics of the next international expansion wave for the Max streamer, and point 7 is pretty short about their video game subdivision, but I want to give that more focus. So both to give those other points more independent focus and to keep this video shorter, I'm going to split those off, but those are just supplements. That the core point about the health of Warner is in these 5 points, so might as well end here. Also, point 5 is a good point to end on because it's speculative. The point 5 is speculation on upcoming mergers and acquisitions that Warner Discovery might do in the coming year. We're going to keep this short because there's no way to 100% predict this, but I just want to share some of the possible scenarios that have been suggested in industry news articles. A lot of that speculation now focuses on what Zaslav's main investment backer is going to do. That for all of David Zaslav being in charge, his main investment backer, shareholder, is a man named John Malone. And what is he going to support? No one is entirely sure what Malone is going to support for Zaslav to do, so that's why I'm keeping this short. It's just things I have seen suggested in print, not all of which I think will necessarily happen. Start with, some speculate that they might spin off and sell CNN, their cable news 24-hour network. Though I doubt that, and a couple of the news articles I've read doubt that too. Again, because as I just explained with sports, the 2 things cable still has going for it are live things such as sports and 24-hour news. That doesn't rule out that they might heavily revamp CNN. There might be budget cuts, there might be heavy staffing changes, but in principle, I think they're going to keep a cable news channel. Because like other streamers and companies that don't have 24-hour news, in many cases wish they did, in general principle. So I consider selling CNN unlikely, just because they might change it a lot, but 24-hour news is something they need. Next, some speculate that they may take DC Comics public. Public as a separately traded stock entity. They'd still own their DC assets in the sense that they would still be the majority shareholder, but that's playing around stock market stuff, so that is possible, but I don't think it would be the biggest shakeup. It's subtle. It's, well, if we take the stock public, like when Batman goes, we're taking Wayne Enterprises public, but then he buys a majority stake in it anyway, so I don't know what that would really affect, but that might happen. I'm not really sure if it would even drastically improve or harm anything. It's just different. Biggest point here, though, is that others have advised that they really need to sell their video games subdivision, WB Games, as they're the last major media company that still has an in-house game division, and they've consistently mishandled it. On the other hand, they have big plans for upcoming Harry Potter video games to tie in with their new show coming out. I'll go over this more in the video game direct video I'm making on this, but ever since that bad report in August, top of the list, everyone said, get rid of your cable channels, and for God's sake, sell your video game division, which has also had problems of its own. Because Warner is about 35 to 40 billion with a B dollars in debt. Much of it inherited debt from the prior owners. And it's assessed that if they sold their video game division, they could get $5 billion cash in hand, which they can then pump into their actually profitable divisions like Max. Lastly, what mega mergers could they even be considering? Probably the ones that are performing the worst: Paramount, possibly even Peacock. Maybe AMC Plus content, we're not really sure. Stars content, something they might try to gobble up now, because it's a buyer's market. That's too hard to predict, but I will say the ones they obviously won't be buying, the big three: Netflix, Amazon, Disney+. One thing I will point out, though, again, if you're unfamiliar with this, is the broadcast rule. That there is federal regulation and red tape against a company owning more than one broadcast channel. In the United States, that's Paramount owns CBS, NBC Universal owns NBC. CW was like split between CBS and Warner, but now they've divested it, and then ABC was owned by Disney. Now, of course, this isn't impossible because in 2016, Disney bought Fox. But that was part of a years-long process involving a lot of red tape. The ABC and Fox are also broadcasters, but in general, it is considered not impossible, but extremely unlikely that one broadcaster would try to buy another one. So it's unlikely that Disney would be able to buy Paramount because of the broadcast channel. They might sell specific assets from it. For all we know, they might sell the Star Trek franchise to Disney. We have no way of knowing that if they sell specific parts of it. But if we're going by one big chunk of Paramount Plus as a whole in a mega merger, it would be very difficult for Disney to do that. Not impossible, they did it with Fox, but it would be a major effort at a time they are trying to save money. Peacock might try to buy Paramount, but they don't have that much money left either. So those Peacock, Disney, and Paramount can't buy each other. I will point out that Warner Brothers Discovery doesn't own any broadcast cable channels, so they could easily buy Paramount or Peacock and not face any red tape for it. Paramount has, even though they just got it bought out by that film studio Skydance, there's a lot of restructuring. All eyes are on Paramount, and to a lesser extent Peacock now, of who is going to snatch up this good IP from a failing streamer that just could not grow big enough, that the market isn't big enough to sustain this many in the streaming wars. But as I am a little over half an hour into this, and again, I said I'm going to split this off into a series of shorter videos, follow-up videos about, well, this is what the expansion waves are going to be, this is more specific stuff about the video games. I'll leave you with, we can't really predict what Zaslav is going to do. Like I said at the beginning, the point of this video is that by every measure, everything that could go well for Warner has surprisingly gone well for it since the start of November. Their stock is up, Max revenue is up, they're open for mega mergers to increase their cash flow again. Everything that could be going well is going well, and with the backlash they faced over episode cuts to some of their flagship franchises, let's see how The Last of Us Season 2 handles that. They had cuts too, but they haven't come out yet. This is a strong argument for a rational person in that position would increase the episode count again for House of the Dragon. But we can't count on Zaslav acting rationally. So I'm going to be doing a series of videos on this. Please like and subscribe to check out the rest of these, going over more specific details of state of the industry for Warner.